Hello and welcome to Boardgame TV. Hope you're doing well. And it's time for me to do another movie countdown. That's right. So I have four favorite directors. John Carpenter's one of them. I've done a countdown on him. Steven Spielberg's another one. Dario Argento's another one. And Quentin Tarantino is my fourth favorite. I've always been a fan of his ever since I first saw Pulp Fiction. And I actually saw Pulp Fiction at the movie theater when it came out in 1994. I remember seeing a trailer for it when I went to go see another movie. I can't remember the other movie. I just remember seeing the trailer for it and going, man, that looks pretty good. And so I put it in the back of my mind and I said, I'm going to see that movie when it comes out. And I remember seeing it and I remember just falling in love with it. And so when I found out who he was, I went back and saw Reservoir Dogs. I had to rent it on video cassette. Those were the days. And then I've kept up with them ever since. And in order to understand, for modern movie people, when Pulp Fiction came out in 1994, the way the movie is set and stylized, it hadn't been done like that before. Movies had not been done like that before. So it was something very new, and it was something very different, and it just hooked you in. And the dialogue, it just every aspect of it hooked you in, and you kind of knew, hey, you had a special type of filmmaker here. And in the 90s, the early to mid 90s, a lot of great filmmakers of today were really starting to emerge at that point in time. You know, you could say Spielberg came out and really started to build himself in the 70s. Same with Dario. Although he did start in the 60s, I don't think he really got his big thing until the 70s. John Carpenter, the same. And Quentin, came out from the 90s. And there are a lot of directors that came out of that time period. I think Quentin's the best of them all. Now, we're going to be ranking, my daughter and myself, my 16-year-old daughter Isabella, she's going to be ranking these movies with me. She's seen them all. We're going to rank all 9 movies. Now, we're going to have a couple ground rules. The first ground rule is that Kill Bill's one movie. So Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2 are going to be considered one movie because Quentin Tarantino considers them one movie. So we're going to go by what he would do. However, if I were to rank Volume 1 and Volume 2 separately, they would be at 2 different places on my list. Because I prefer Kill Bill Volume 1 to Kill Bill Volume 2. And they're 2 completely different movies, to be honest with you. So, but for this list ranking, they're going to be one movie. Number 2 is, I'm not including any of his screenplay where he wrote movies where he wrote the screenplay. So True Romance, Natural Born Killers, From Dusk Till Dawn, stuff like that, I'm not including on here. Neither am I including 4 Rooms because he only did 1 story out of the 4 in that. But I'll just tell you my thoughts real quick on the screenplay ones. True Romance is fantastic. How different that movie would have been had he directed it. I know he wanted to. Who knows? We'll never know, but True Romance is fantastic. From Dusk Till Dawn I love. It's like watching 2 different movies. And the slow burn Quentin Tarantino movie, then the vampires come in and just all goes to action-packed hell. And then Natural Born Killers, which I don't like. I've never liked Natural Born Killers. I always thought Oliver Stone was a hack director. He was overrated. I never liked none of his stuff. I thought maybe Platoon was okay. Never cared about his other work. And I think he really did a disservice to Quentin's screenplay for Natural Born Killers. I think had Tarantino directed Natural Born Killers, that movie would have been different and it would have been a lot better. Natural Born Killers was just stylistically just so over the top and ridiculous. It was just, it almost seems like a parody, which I mean I don't want to get into it, but I just don't like Natural Born Killers. Number 3 is I'm not going to spoil any of these movies. I know I'm going to have to come to certain plot points when I talk about these movies and what I like and don't like about them, but I'm going to do my best not to spoil them because, one, for those of you who've never seen any of these movies or have seen some but not all, your initial impact when seeing a Tarantino movie is when you've never seen it before. You know, there's always some kind of twist or something big in there, and I don't want to ruin any of the movies for you. You never. A lot of these movies you can watch on repeated viewing, and they're still good. But the first time you see it, it's always kind of like the oomph, the wow. So I'm gonna try my best not to spoil anything. I'm gonna have nitpicks about certain ones and stuff like that, but yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not going to be getting into spoilers. So if you haven't seen any of these and you want to watch my list, that's fine. I'm not going to spoil anything for you. For those of you who have, I'm going to give you hints as to let you know what I'm talking about, so you'll know what I'm talking about on my gripes or praise about it, but I'm not going to spoil it. And last but not least, really, is I like all his movies. All 9 of them. I think all 9 are good. I can watch all 9 whenever I'm in the mood. I don't think the guy's made a bad movie. He's not like, to me, like Dario, who was a great director and great filmmaker, and then come in the 2000s afterwards, he started making stinker movies. Or where you can say about John Carpenter, where he's made a couple bad ones. Quentin Tarantino really hasn't made a bad movie in my mind. Now he's only made 9, but still he hasn't made a bad one. And it goes without saying that for every one of his movies, the guy gets the basics, the fundamentals done right. You know, in my old job, there were a lot of things about fundamentals. And if you're professional, you always get the fundamentals right. Well, he always gets the fundamentals right. The movies are always well shot. The writing's always really good. There's no big mistakes on editing or anything like that. He's got great soundtracks. And his actors are always excellent. No phone-in performances. No sloppy writing for the most part. He just gets the fundamentals right. He knows how to make movies. And that's something we take for granted, I think, a little bit. But if you watch a lot of schlock movies like I do, like, you know, B movies, you can call them, or grew up in the 80s and 70s, watching a lot of those great movies of that period, but watching a lot of movies of that period, you know, a lot of mistakes are made on a lot of movies, but he doesn't seem to make any of those mistakes. I think the most you can criticize him is the story or the writing, and that's basically it, and it's usually like a personal preference type thing. But as far as his camera work, his cinematography, the production values, the editing, the actors, the guy has got it all down packed, and the fundamentals are so great that you know, I guess that's a talent upon itself. And you know, he's a real passionate director. If you've seen him in his interviews and the behind the scenes stuff and everything of that nature, which I've watched all this week, all the movies back to back in order that they came out. I've watched all the behind the scenes stuff for the movies, interviews, stuff like that, and so I think I got a good grasp on it. Now, your list of Quentin may not agree with mine. I know my daughter's isn't going to agree with mine. If you got any disagreements or nitpicks or anything like that, you know, you want to say them, fine, say them. I'm not scared to get criticism or anything, but be nice about it. Let's be civil about it. But yeah, other than that, 9 movies. We're gonna count them down from my least favorite. I'm not gonna say worst to best, because like I said, I don't think any of these are bad movies. But I'm gonna say from least favorite to most favorite. And remember, Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 are one movie, and no screenplay works. He has to write and direct, okay, to be on this list. It's not going to be just screenplay. And another thing I want to quickly add is that soundtrack. My ranking on some of these movies depends a lot on the soundtrack. I've always liked his soundtracks. For the most part. I always like what he's done with music in movies. And so some of these movies may rank higher to me because of the music that's in them. I know we kind of all have that kind of thing going from time to time. But however, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started. Alright, my least favorite, my number 9, is Death Proof. I get what Quentin Tarantino was trying to do with this movie, and I think him and Robert Rodriguez did a good job with the whole Grindhouse thing. However, I think that if you do the Grindhouse thing together, the more entertaining movie is Planet Terror. So I think Quentin got the short end of the stick on that. However, you can't really judge it as Grindhouse together with Planet Terror, so we're just going to judge it by itself as Death Proof. And Death Proof to me is just my least favorite movie of his. The only thing I like about this movie, to be honest with you, is Kurt Russell as Stuntman Mike. I think Kurt Russell's performance is fantastic. And you know, I think the acting in it, of course, is pretty good. I think the stunt at the end, the stunt driving is pretty good, but you know, it takes a long time to get to it. Now, a lot of Quentin Tarantino movies, as a matter of fact, every Quentin Tarantino movie usually plays out. They have long scenes of dialogue, and then boom, something big happens, or you have some action. The problem with Death Proof for me is it's the only one of his movies, with the exception of one other, where you have these long scenes of dialogue with these girls, and I find it very boring, to be honest with you. I don't find it interesting at all, especially the first group of girls. I think their conversation or their interactions and their stuff is just boring. I'll go to the bathroom or something, or I'll get, you know, have to get occupied by something else and do something, and it's just, you know, Kurt Russell's the only reason to watch this movie. Now Kurt Russell is fantastic in this movie. Kurt Russell is, you know, he steals every scene. He's great. My other complaint with this movie is the big swerve they give you at the end about Kurt Russell's character. I don't like the direction that they went with that. I would have found the movie much more interesting had Kurt Russell kind of stayed the same throughout the whole movie. I know that was his big creative choice, and he was looking for, Quentin was looking for you to have a big joke and laugh about it. Yeah, I don't like that choice. I like how when the second group of girls comes around and Kurt Russell's taking pictures of them, and they're playing that old 1960s Italian gallo music, and have it like almost like The Bird in the Crystal Plumage or some of those Dario Argento, Mario Bava Italian slasher movies. It feels very much like that, and I love that. But what totally undermines that is the swerve they give you about Kurt Russell's character towards the end of the movie. And those of you who've seen the movie know what the hell I'm talking about. That takes that whole gallo thing away, and so yeah, I was not happy with that. So that's my big problems with this movie, is that the girl dialogue scenes are really kind of boring to me, and Kurt Russell's character Swerve. I'm not saying that the girls were bad acting. I just was saying that I think that the dialogue was boring. I think Rosario Dawson is a fine actress. She's always been a good actress. I think all the girls act pretty good, especially Rose McGowan. I like Rose McGowan's little cheery character in here, and then you feel really bad for her. So, but she gets her good moments in Planet Terror. So that's my review of Death Proof. I do like the soundtrack for this movie. I like the soundtrack very much. Of course, my favorite song is that Chick Habit song. I love that song. It's just so catchy. I don't know what it is about it. It's just so catchy. You ask my kids, I played that over and over, and it tortured them playing it. But man, yeah, it was real catchy. So I really love that song. And then of course, he takes music from the old Italian movies as well and puts it in there from Ennio Morricone or whatever, however you pronounce his name. So Death Proof is my number 9. Issa, what's your number 9?
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, okay.
I don't hate any of these movies. I really like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I actually think it's really good. But there is a lot of plot holes in it. And Brad Pitt's character, I feel like it needed more. There just wasn't that much done with it. And it is really slow sometimes during the movie, but I do think it's interesting, and I think the ending is really great. Okay.
So my number 9 was Death Proof, and Issa's number 9 was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now on to number 8. Alright, my number 8 is Quentin's newest Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So, boy, what do I say about this movie? Okay, I was watching this movie, and for like the first hour, I'm trying to figure out what the hell is this movie about? Where's it going? What's the deal with it? What's the point? And I know that this is Quentin Tarantino's love letter to the old Hollywood, but I don't know who he made this movie for, to be honest with you. I don't think most modern cinema people are going to get this movie. If you didn't grow up in the 60s, or 70s, or 50s, a lot of stuff in this movie is just going to fly over your head. I grew up in the 70s, and I grew up watching reruns of a lot of these old shows, so I got most of the stuff in here. But a lot of this stuff is just going to go over the modern audience's head, and I don't know how well this movie did at the movie theater. I don't think it did as great as they wanted to. Honestly, if I were a movie executive or a Hollywood guy, I'd have been like, you don't tell Quentin Tarantino no when he wants to make a movie. But I would have told him no with this one. I'd have been like, nah, this just... come up, do a different story. Do the Vega Brothers movie you were wanting to do, or do a horror movie or something. But this was just, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell Margaret Robbie's character of Sharon Tate, what was her purpose in this movie? I mean, I still don't get it. I don't care for the soundtrack that much. This movie is long, and it's long getting to what it needs to get to. So those are really my gripes about the movie. However, the reason it beats out Death Proof, for me, is the end. This is another... I have a bone of contention with 2 Quentin Tarantino's movies. In 2 of his movies, they kind of alter history. One of them I was upset about. This one I actually liked. I liked the altered history at the end of this movie. I think it's hilarious. I think it's great. I wish in real life that's what happened. However, it just took too long to get there. Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, their performances were fantastic, as they normally are. I've never been a big Leonardo DiCaprio fan, to be honest with you. I've only liked him in maybe one or two movies outside of any Quentin Tarantino movie he did. But when he started appearing in like Django Unchained and this, my stock with him rose up a lot. I like him. I know he's a great actor. Everybody in this movie did a good job. I liked Brad Pitt's character a lot. I thought his little thing at the end where he's high reminded me a hell of a lot of his character from True Romance. And I thought that was pretty great. But this is one that just, it's not one that engaged me. I didn't like it until, it really started to engage me until Brad Pitt went to the Spawn Ranch. When his character went to the Spawn Ranch, I liked that. I started getting, okay, I'm starting to see maybe where this movie's going to go. And I liked that, but it took way too long to get there. I don't have any sentimental value for the 60s and 50s old Hollywood. So a lot of the sentimental value that people appreciate about this movie of that old system, I'm not going to appreciate it as much as they are. Because it's just not to me. If he had made something maybe on the 80s or early 90s type thing, that would have sentimental value for me, but this one doesn't. And I think that's a big risk he took when making a love letter to the old type of Hollywood. So yeah, but it's not a bad movie once you kind of get into it. Once you start getting into it, like I said, the production value is fantastic. The acting is off the chains great. There's a lot of cameos from people here and there that are fun and interesting to see. And the ending is just bonkers great. I mean, the ending, man, I love the ending to this movie. But you got to go through a lot of stuff to get there. And that's my big gripe with that. So, Issa, what's your number 8?
Well, before I get into number 8, I would like to comment that I understand that Margot Robbie's character was supposed to be like this more dream-like of what people would want Hollywood to be. And then Brad Pitt's and Leonardo DiCaprio's characters are more of a realistic type. And so I definitely do not have any sentimental value with old stuff like that. But I really do enjoy, I think it's a pretty movie, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But this, it's kind of, the reason why this is like my least favorite one is because it's so slow. But my number 8 is Death Proof.
Okay.
And I have to agree, the only good thing about the movie was Kurt Russell. The girls, they are the worst characters. Like, they're awful. And they are so unnatural. Their friendship in the movie is like so hateful towards each other. And like, I actually did root for Kurt Russell to like kill everybody. I wanted him to.
Yeah, I was rooting for Kurt Russell too.
Like, he's really the only good part about the movie. And the characters were just awful. I didn't like the transition from the first girls to the second girls, like second group. I did not like both groups, but I think they both had really good qualities about them, I guess. And the ending was really stupid. And it left me wanting more out of it. Like, really? Like, that's it? But the reason it's above Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is just because it's entertaining to watch. I feel like I could watch it multiple times and like still have fun with it. But with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I couldn't. So.
Okay. Well, that's number 8. So my number 8 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Issa's number 8 is Death Proof. So we just basically switched our 9 and 8. So number 7 is coming next. Alright, my number 7 is Jackie Brown. You know, after Pulp Fiction came out and it was such a massive success, any movie Quentin would have done after that would have been held to the standard of Pulp Fiction. And I don't think any movie he would have been able to hit that standard of Pulp Fiction. So I think Jackie Brown was kind of doomed from the start. It's the only movie of his that was kind of adapted from another person's book, even though he didn't make it his. I think the soundtrack for this movie is really good. I love the soul disco type sounds of it. I think you know, his kind of take on the whole blaxploitation type movies are pretty good. I think the cast is phenomenal. Pam Grier, who's been a staple of John Carpenter movies and of the low budget 80s movies, I think really finally got her due since her days in the blaxploitation cinema, and she did a fantastic job. Robert Forster, you know, same thing with him. I think, you know, he does a fantastic job in this movie as Max Cherry, and I'm glad he was. I can't remember if he won, but I know he was nominated for an awards for this. Samuel L. Jackson plays Ordell, and I think Ordell is one of his most vicious bad guys he plays. I think he really does a good job. This is actually one of my favorite roles from Samuel L. Jackson in this movie right here. I think his role as Ordell, as a you know, the vicious bad guy, is really good. I even like Michael Keaton in this movie. Fonda there, and even Robert De Niro as Lewis. I just wish they would have did a little bit more with Lewis. The caper plot is interesting. It's just, my big deal with this movie is it can drag sometimes. When Samuel L. Jackson's Ordell is not in the movie, the movie kind of gets a little dull or boring, I would say. I think the movie's a little long. Like I said, I think Lewis kind of got wasted as a character. That's really all my gripes with it. It kind of gets, Jackie Brown does get a bad rep from people, and I think unjustly so. I think it's a good movie, but once you've watched it a couple times, there's really no. It's probably the less rewatchable movie of the series to me, and that's why it's ranked so high on my list right now. But you know, it's still, like I said, it's a great movie. I'll pull it out and watch it every now and then. And fantastic. It's good to see fantastic performances from Pam Grier and Robert Forster, and just root for them. And the fact that Michael Keaton's Ray character, he plays the same character in another movie, is pretty interesting. So I like that as well. So Jackie Brown's my number 7. Issa, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is Pulp Fiction.
Okay.
And everybody can hate me, but that's it. I feel like this movie's like just really hyped up. Like, I think like when it first came out, like, yeah, it's really different, so I can understand that. But people still think like it's the best movie they've ever seen. I just can't understand why. I mean, Uma Thurman and the scenes with her and John Travolta are really good. And that was pretty much like my favorite parts of the movie. And the story is okay. But yeah, people love this movie, and I can't really see why. It's good. I mean, like, it's a good movie. It's interesting, but it's not the best. And Bruce Willis's story was stupid and uncalled for, and it served no purpose at all. There was like no connection. But I mean, Samuel L. Jackson's really funny, so that's kind of a redeeming quality from it. But I just didn't get that much. I was very excited to see it because I had never seen it before, and I was like, oh, everybody really likes this movie. I feel like I'm gonna like it too, but no, I did not. So yeah.
All right, so you heard it here. My number 7 is Jackie Brown, and her number 7 is Pulp Fiction. Go figure on that. I thought I raised it right. So, alright, now moving on to number 6. Alright, my number 6 is The Hateful Eight. Quentin's second Western. And I know this movie also gets a lot of flack, but what puts this movie over the top for me is, one, I like good Westerns. I just love Westerns. There's not enough Westerns anymore. I've always, ever since I've seen The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, I've always wanted to see another Western masterpiece as good as Good, the Bad, the Ugly. And unfortunately, I haven't. I came close a couple times, maybe with Tombstone, maybe a few others here or there, but the Western is a lost genre. And I like Westerns, and I like this movie. I like all the actors in this movie. I, for the most part, like most of the characters in this movie. The big problem with this movie, and I think the thing that everybody agrees with, is it just takes too damn long to get going. Okay? The photography for this movie, the outdoor photography, is beautiful. The movie looks beautiful. It looks like it's the Old West. And I like the mystery aspect of it. But it takes too long to get to the mystery aspect of it. If you saw the trailers, you knew what this movie was about, because you have Kurt Russell in the trailer going, one of these people's not who they say they're going to be, and all that kind of stuff. However, if you never saw the trailer and you just started watching this movie, you would have never thought about the whole mystery aspect of it. It just, hey, he's on his way to take Jennifer Jason Leigh, who it was good to see again, by the way. I don't know what happens to these actors, and Quentin brings them back. But, last big thing I think Jennifer Jason Leigh was in was Single White Female. Of course, I always remember her from The Hitcher. I loved her in The Hitcher. And it was good to see her back. Kurt Russell, fantastic as always. Samuel Jackson's fantastic. Walter Goggins is fantastic. Tim Roth. I don't think they did enough with the Michael Madison character. That's another little pet peeve I have. But this movie, basically, the big problem I have with this movie is it just takes too long to get to where they're going to get. And I have a problem with what happens to Kurt Russell. I can't say any more, but yeah, I have a problem with that. That's more of a artistic kind of thing for me, is what happens with Kurt Russell. But yeah, I had a problem with that. But yeah, this movie just takes too long to get where it's got to get. Once you're there, I mean, this movie could have been 30 minutes shorter, to be honest with you. And I hear there's even an extended cut of this movie, which makes this movie even longer. So wow. But it could have been shorter. You could have got to the mystery part a lot quicker. You could have expanded a little bit more on a few of the other characters, like Michael Madison's character, maybe Tim Roth's character a little bit. But yeah, that's where I'm at. So, but otherwise, I think this is a good Western mystery type movie. Not the action type Western. We'll leave that for Django. But the more of the slow burn type Western that has the big action at the end. So that's my number 6, is The Hateful Eight. Issa, what's yours?
Mine is Jackie Brown.
Okay.
I really like Jackie Brown, and I am a huge fan of Michael Keaton. So, even as a minor character, I still really like him.
And he plays that same character in another movie.
Right, you just said that, which I did not know before he said that, but I think it's like a simple yet real compelling movie. I really did like it. The acting was spot on. I feel like Ordell and Jackie, and even some of the other characters. Like, everybody did so well for the movie. And I think it's a movie where you can feel for the characters. Like, I actually felt for them. Like, if something bad happened to them, I was like, oh no, like, you know. And I felt really bad for them. And I think the romance was done really well too. And I have to agree with Daddy. Samuel L. Jackson plays a bomb bad guy in that movie. And he does really well.
Yeah, he does play a bomb bad guy in that movie. I really like him in that movie. I like his character in that movie more than I liked him in this one. Although I like I like his character, the Major, in this movie, and I think he does a pretty good job with it. I just think in Jackie Brown, his bad guy character was so much better.
Yeah, and the reason I put Jackie Brown above Pulp Fiction is because it has Michael Keaton in it. I thought they were in the same boat, but gotta get an extra point for Michael Keaton being in that movie.
Okay. Alright, so that's my number 6 is The Hateful Eight, and Issa's number 6 is Jackie Brown. Alright, so now comes our number 5. Alright, my number 5 is the first Quentin Tarantino movie, the one that started it all, as far as him directing, Reservoir Dogs. Man, this movie is great. This is a classic. Like I said, I first saw this movie on video cassette about a year or two after it came out. It was right after I saw Pulp Fiction, and I wanted to know more about Quentin Tarantino, and I found out that Reservoir Dogs was his first movie. Great crime caper. All the actors in it are fantastic for the most part. It's a shame that I don't know why Harvey Keitel or Steve Buscemi haven't been in more recent Quentin Tarantino movies, but it's good to see Tim Roth and Michael Madsen back in Tarantino territory. Basically, this movie is basically about several guys are going to commit a robbery of a diamond store. They don't know each other. They've all been brought in separately to do it, so they don't know each other, who they really are. And one of them happens to be a cop, and the robbery goes really bad, and so they're all, those remaining ones, trying to figure out who's the cop and who set them up. And it's just a really good crime caper. Fantastic soundtrack. I still think James Gunn got the Ooga Chaga for Guardians of the Galaxy. He got it from this. He was thinking of this movie when he got that in mind. And the first song, you know, Little Greenback, is just fantastic. So I love this soundtrack. I used to have this soundtrack on tape. I used to play it when I was driving around. The only reason it's ranked, I guess maybe midway, is because I feel that Quentin, even though this was his first movie and it was critically acclaimed and it is a great movie, I just feel that he's grown a lot more. Of course, he's got better budgets now. You can tell this is kind of a, if you go back and watch this now, you can tell that it's kind of really low budget because it all takes place in like a warehouse for the most part. You can tell all the budget really went to the actors and stuff like that to get such great actors to play in his movie, and I guess maybe royalties for the music he put in it. I think that when all the money went to that. I just think he's grown much more as a filmmaker, and I think out of all his movies, I think really this is the only one that kind of gets affected by the passage of time. Starts to feel a little dated. I think this is one of the few that feel of his movies that just feel a little dated. So, but it's still a great movie. It's his first. Many consider it his best. I just think he's gotten better, and I think he's made better stuff. But it's a fantastic movie. All great performances all the way around. Great moments. The whole "You're Mr. Pink, you're Mr. Blonde." Man, that stuff is so funny. And some of the dialogue and interaction between the guys is great. So my number 5 is Reservoir Dogs. Issa, what's your number 5?
Mine is Inglourious Bastards.
Okay.
I rated this one an 8 out of 10, so just so you know, like, I did not rate any of them super low. I actually really like all of the movies. But this one was so funny and so gory, and I really liked it. I hate historical movies. Like, even if they're, like, comedies and stuff, like, I can't, like, I just don't like them.
You mean like period pieces?
Yeah. And I love this movie. But, like, you know, and it's gotta be, like, the goriest Tarantino film, too. And I love gore, so I think that really redeems it for me. And it's so silly. Like, a whole bunch of the scenes are obviously, like, super unrealistic and are so silly. And there's even one scene that Daddy was like, this is so dumb. And I was like, yeah, it's dumb, but it's so funny. And the ending was sad, but it was definitely really satisfying, too. Like, I think it came together so well. And I didn't think any of the movie was, like, super, super slow either. So I think it's a good piece.
Okay. Well, that's my number 5 is Reservoir Dogs, and Isa's number 5 is Inglourious Bastards. Now on to number 4. Okay, my number 4, which I know would probably be a lot of people's number 1, is Django Unchained. It's another Western, so that's a plus for it. The acting all the way around by everybody is a serious plus. And let me say this. I really never cared for Jamie Foxx. I liked him in Living Color. But once he started making movies and stuff, I didn't care for him. He does a fantastic job in this movie. Leonardo DiCaprio, as I said before, I never really cared for Leonardo DiCaprio. But when he was in this movie, this is when I started to take notice of him and actually started to like him as an actor. So that, you know, says a lot. He's a great bad guy. Of course, the movie looks good. Filmed great. I love all the little cameos. And there are a lot of cameos in this movie. From James Remar to Tom Wopat, one of the Dukes of Hazzard Duke boys. From Don Johnson there, who I love from Miami Vice. And I thought he was fantastic in his role as Big Daddy in this movie. To Christoph Waltz, I think he did a better job in this movie than he did in Inglourious Bastards. Acting wise, there's just a lot of Jonah Hill. There's just a lot of cool cameos. Lee Horsley. There's just a lot that, you know, Lee Horsley. Matt, what was his name? He was his show in the 80s where he was a private investigator. I used to watch. I love a lot of these actors that he puts in these movies, and I'm glad to see them in here. Now, this movie and my next movie, depending on how I feel when I woke up, could actually switch places. Because I have two big problems with both movies. However, the problem I have with this movie, I think, was bigger than I had with the other one. And my one big problem, the one thing that really hurts this movie for me, doesn't make it like number 1 on my list, the big bugaboo, is what Christoph Waltz's character does towards the end of the movie. He does something so stupid, and I just have a hard time getting past that. For the beginning and all the movie, he's calm, he's cool, collected, he's smart, he's one step ahead of everybody, he's always in control. And then out of the blue, he just does something so stupid, and it sets off what happens at the end of the movie. And I just don't see his character doing that. This is the only instance where I ever felt that Quentin Tarantino had lazy writing. It's like, well, we have to have all this stuff happen at the end, so this is how we're going to do it. His character is going to do an irrational, stupid thing, and he does. And I just can't get past that part. I'm not a big fan of the soundtrack of this movie either. I think the soundtrack should have felt more Western. I know he uses the song from the old Django movies of the 60s and 70s, the old Italian spaghetti westerns of the Django movies. And I like the fact that Franco Nero, who played the original Django, has an appearance in this movie, and he's even asked to spell the name, and he says, yes, I know the D is silent. You know, I love that, and it's fantastic. And I think this is Samuel L. Jackson at his best. I think his portrayal, his bad guy character is so great. I just love his portrayal in this movie. This is my favorite. This is my favorite Samuel L. Jackson part in all the Quentin Tarantino movies, with the exception of one other. And probably know which one that is. But this is my favorite Samuel L. Jackson role. He is so good in this role right here, and he's such a creep. It's just great. But yeah, I have that big problem. I can't spoil it for you in case you've never seen this movie. But if you see this movie before, you know what I'm talking about. You know where he does the irrational thing, and it takes the movie into the action-packed ending, and it's just stupid of him as a character to do that, and I have a hard time getting by that. But other than that, that's my number 4, Django Unchained. So Issa, what's your number 4?
Mine is The Hateful Eight.
Okay.
I gave this movie 9 out of 10. It has just an amazing cast. I really like. I mean, I feel like everybody just does so well with each other. Like Kurt Russell's character, Michael Madison's character. I feel like they all are so amazing. And the movie's crazy. I can't, it's just a crazy movie. And it is really long. But I think I can get past that because it's so interesting to me. But I feel like it would be better to not watch the trailer when you get into the movie rather than watch the trailer, because I did not watch the trailer. And, but, Daddy already told me what was going on, so I really did enjoy kind of the mystery part, even if it did take a while to get started. And I do not like what they do with Kurt Russell's character either. I can agree with that, definitely. And I think the effects were really good, too. It is a brilliantly gory movie as well, and I think those effects are always amazing in Quentin's movies.
So I noticed you hadn't ranked Django yet, so you and I agree that Django Unchained is the better Western movie?
Oh, definitely. And I don't even like Westerns. I don't watch Westerns because I don't like them.
Yeah, I think Django Django from the get-go was more fast-paced and to the point, and it has more action in it than The Hateful Eight, which is a slow burn up until basically the end where the action comes. I think Django's just faster paced and it's got more action in it. It's just a better Western. It doesn't have the mystery aspect, but I just think it's the better of the two. So that's why I ranked it above The Hateful Eight.
Yeah, and in The Hateful Eight, costume design and the lighting is really good, and it is a very pretty movie. The ending was good, but it was pretty stupid as well. There was a certain thing, certain somebody that I did not like at the end of that movie. Because it just, why?
Okay.
But, yeah.
Alright, well that's number 4. So here comes number 3. Alright, my number 3 is Inglourious Basterds. Like I said, just depending on how I feel during the day, Inglourious Basterds and Django Unchained could flip-flop with each other, but I tend to usually like Inglourious Basterds a little bit more. I like World War II movies. Not as much as I like Westerns, but I do like World War II movies. They're done right. This movie is just fantastic. Christoph Waltz got introduced to America. Michael Fassbender got introduced to America with this movie. I like all the actors in it. I think they all do a great job. I play a lot of Wolfenstein, so you can tell that the Wolfenstein video games were heavily influenced by this movie. But my one big problem with this movie is the history swerve that take at the end. He's done that twice, like I said. He did it Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I like that one. I actually thought it was great. But I don't like the history swerve that he took in this one. I just don't. I remember watching this movie and it's happening and I'm like, what? I never would have expected that. Oh boy, I just didn't go for it. However, the movie is beautiful to look at as well. Christoph Waltz's Landon of the SS. He's one of the best bad guys to come out of this new generation of films. He's a fantastic villain. Brad Pitt knocks it out of the park as Aldo Ray. I mean, that's just classic Brad Pitt doing a great job. And, you know, it's a good espionage. It's a World War II movie of the typical espionage type World War II movies. And you basically have 3 different stories, and they all combine kind of at the end. You have the, you know, and you have the bastards. You have the whole blow up the theater storyline, and you have the whole Shoshana with her, you know, wanting revenge on Christoph Waltz's character and the Nazis for what they've done to her because she's a Jew, and her family. So you have all 3 of these stories intermingle at the end, and it's pretty good. It sets it up real well, and it's one of the most iconic performances from Brad Pitt. Yeah, Daniel Bruhl, he's also really introduced to America. He would later be known as Baron Zemo in Civil War. So, fantastic movie. I do love how they do the Sergeant Stahl thing in here. I wish they did more of that in this movie. I liked his character a lot. He was just pretty cool. But the acting is fantastic. I have no problem with all the different languages that come up. I actually think that's pretty... And not enough movies do that. It's more accurate that way. You feel like you're a more accurate thing where one guy speaks English, one guy speaks German, and you got to read the subtitles because you're in their native country. You got to speak their native tongue. Not everybody speaks English, and I thought that was a pretty good thing for Quentin to do on that. I love the Cat People song towards the middle of the movie by David Bowie. I used to love that song in the early 80s when it came out. Fantastic song. I loved it in this movie. I remember hearing it when it came on. I was going like, ah, damn, alright, I love that song. And yeah, that's Inglourious Bastards for me. And that's going to be my number, well, whatever that is. Was it number 3? What's your number 3?
Mine's Reservoir Dogs. This movie is absolutely phenomenal to me. It's so unique to me. I think that it has an amazing plot. The plot is very unique as well. I don't like the acting too. It's so just on point, and the conversations that all these guys have together feel so realistic and genuine, like they would actually say that kind of stuff. I feel like that's extremely realistic. And there's obviously great chemistry kind of going on between the actors too. You can really tell just the smoothness of the conversations, and I actually disagree with Daddy because I think the movie holds up to now. A lot of people, when they first do a movie, it's not very good and it doesn't hold up for a long time. But I think this one does. I think Reservoir Dogs holds up immensely. I think that...
I'm not saying Reservoir Dogs doesn't hold up. I'm just saying that I think as a filmmaker, he's gone beyond what he can do with that movie because that movie had a low budget, and I said it feels dated. It feels like a 90s movie. Whereas I could put in Inglourious Bastards and it doesn't feel like it was made in any certain decade. I could put Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in and it doesn't feel like it was made in any certain decade. I still think it holds up. It was a real good movie. I have it on my list like halfway down the list, so it's better than still a lot of his other movies. That's just what I think about that.
Yeah, and I think the ending is really good too. Sad, but it's expected.
Yeah. Okay, so number 3 for me was Inglourious Bastards, and number 3 for Issa was
Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs. And you know there's another Inglourious Basterds movie.
Really?
You didn't know that, did you?
No.
Yeah, it was made in what, the 60s or 70s? This is not a remake or reboot of it. It just happens to take the same name. But the other one was about a World War II film with a group called the Bastards who had to beat Nazis.
Which actually, in Glorious Bastards, I really do like all the different storylines and how they intertwine them.
Yeah. So, Inglourious Bastards. Alright, my number 2 is Pulp Fiction. Now, I know that this movie ranks so high on my list because a lot of it has to do with sentimental value. 1994 was probably one of the best years of my life. And 1994 really got good for me after I saw this movie. And like I said before, I remember seeing the trailer for this movie. I can't remember what movie I was watching when I saw the trailer for it. But I remember seeing the trailer for it going, it looks like a pretty cool movie. I might have to go see that when it comes out. And when it came out, I saw it. Loved it. It was so different from anything at its time. The fact that this movie's told out of order and was not done back then, really. The way he sets his narrative up was totally new and fresh. The whole dialogue between people was just not, that's not the way movies were done. I mean, they have 10, 15, 20-minute scenes of nothing but dialogue. Usually in most movies, when you have scenes like that, you're bored off your butt and you don't want to watch anymore. But for this movie, it was like you were just riveted. You didn't care. Hell, you wanted them to talk more. And it brought back John Travolta. Bruce Willis was in it, who's always good. Eric Stoltz right there is pretty fantastic. Uma Thurman, it made her career. And of course, we all know it made Samuel L. Jackson's career. Hell, I mean, this is probably Samuel L. Jackson's most iconic character, arguably, that he's ever played. And it's probably his best character he's ever played, arguably. Fantastic all the way around. The acting is great. For a second movie, for him to have done a second movie, the improvement over Reservoir Dogs, production, camera angles, filming, editing, all that was just you can tell it's a big step up, that he gotten better in his craft. The soundtrack for this movie is fantastic. I remember buying the soundtrack, riding around in my car, the Jungle Boogie and the little surf songs. And of course, back then, which hadn't happened before, but in the Quentin Tarantino soundtrack, he puts dialogue from the movie as tracks. So you hear one song and then you'll hear a dialogue scene from the movie and then they go on to the next song. So you'd be riding around in your car and you'd actually be hearing the Royale with Cheese dialogue from the movie by Sam and Jackson Travolta, and you'd be driving around listening to it. The only weak point to me is the Bruce Willis story. Not the whole Gimp part and all that, but the beginning part. The part where he escapes from the boxing arena and then goes to the hotel and he's with his doofy girlfriend who I never liked. I thought she was real stupid. That's really the only slow part of the movie to me. The rest of the movie is fantastic, and like I said, probably because of sentimental reasons, this movie is so high on my list. Like I said, it got me into Tarantino. It got a lot of people to try to start ripping off Tarantino and making movies like him after this. This movie still has a lot of influence on movies today. I mean, you should have seen the copycats. If you weren't around after this movie came out, you should have seen the copycat movies popping up at the video store, all trying to be the next Pulp Fiction. It was crazy, and none of it worked. So yeah, I love this movie. I will always love this movie because every time I watch this movie or hear a song from this movie, it's back to 1994 for me and having a great time. And it's just, life was so good then, and I just can't help it. So, Pulp Fiction is my number 2. Issa, what's your number 2?
Django Unchained.
Okay.
It had great cinematography. Like, just every scene was so well shot, and it's just amazing all around. Like, every actor did amazing. Even the people that had like 2 lines in the movie, like, it was just on point for me. And compared to the, like, let's say Kill Bill, since they're both kind of on the same level, it has more realistic gore, if that makes sense. I know I don't really, but I loved all the characters, and I really felt for all the characters, and I wanted them to win, you know. And I enjoyed all of them. I hated the bad guys. Like, for me, this is one of Tarantino's best movies. Like, I feel like every person on the planet should watch this.
Do you agree with me about, without giving away any spoilers, what the German Christoph Waltz's character does?
Okay, but
it's freaking stupid.
See, that's
and
where,
out of character for him.
Okay, see, I do. No, actually, I don't. I don't agree. See, cause I feel like the situation was like he knew that obviously don't do that. It was a dumb thing. Like if what was going to happen, if he knew that, he would probably have done it. But I feel like there was no escaping from that situation. Like, he couldn't have just walked away, and he couldn't have just been normal with the other person. I feel like he was kind of trapped in that situation, so I can understand why he did that.
I think it was
I don't
stupid.
think it was stupid.
Okay. Well, that's my number 2 is Pulp Fiction. Ace's number 2 is Django Unchained. And you know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese?
No, shut up.
France. A Royale with cheese. They still talk about stuff from this movie. And that's a testament to Ezekiel 25:17. Stuff from this movie still gets brought up, and that's a testament to how good this movie is. Damn near what? 94, 24, almost 30 years later. Hard to believe, but almost 30 years later.
And with Django, I feel like it was who plays Django's buddy? Who plays him? What's his name?
Christoph Waltz.
Yeah, okay, Christoph Waltz. He does phenomenal, and I feel like it's probably his best role compared to Inglourious Bastards. But obviously, they're both absolutely phenomenal roles. And I do not like westerns, like I said, but I feel like The Hateful Eight isn't the typical western, but I feel like Django kind of is. And I have never seen the other Django movies, and I didn't get any of the cameos except for Jonah Hill. But I just love the movie. I feel like it's such a great and amazing movie.
Okay. Alright, so if you've deduced what it is, you should know what both of our seems like our number 1 movie is. Alright, so both of us, our number 1 is Kill Bill. Now, like I said before, what I wanted to say was, had Kill Bill Volume 1 and Kill Bill Volume 2 been 2 different movies, Kill Bill Volume 1 would have been my number 1, and I probably would have put Kill Bill number 2, I don't know, somewhere between, maybe somewhere between Inglourious Bastards and Django Unchained. I think Kill Bill Volume 1 is the better movie. They're 2 totally different movies, to be honest with you. I mean, they're just different from each other. They feel different. I think this, but if you put them both together and watch them as one movie, I think this is his masterpiece. I think, honestly don't think he'll ever outdo this. And I wish he would do a Volume 3. I'm not a big fan of the kung fu movies. I just never cared much for the kung fu samurai genre. But man, do I love this movie. I think all the acting in it is fantastic. I think the movie is shot great. I love the little insert shots that he does, little quirky things like when she pulls out the eye and the movie goes black and white, and you have the fight there, and then when she blinks back, the movie comes back in color. I think all the little tricks like that he did with this movie is fantastic. I mean, this movie is just, the fight choreography is freaking phenomenal. The soundtrack for this movie is my second favorite soundtrack. I love the music for both movies that he did. From Nancy Sinatra's opening song to, you know, all of the songs that are now famous songs because of this movie. This is his masterpiece. I don't think he'll ever top it. Now, I do have a few problems with each one. My only problem with Kill Bill Volume 1 really is I don't care for the anime section that explains O-Ren's background. I thought I didn't care for that. I understand why he did it, and I know a lot of people may care for it, but I just don't care for that. I think also the character of O-Ren, you start to feel sympathy for her because, you know, she was kind of in the same boat. She got vengeance, but instead of, after getting her vengeance, she just became an evil, worse person. She became what she hated, and she seemed a little bit overpowered. And then when she fights Uma Thurman at the end, it just seems like Uma Thurman just kind of handily whips her butt. I thought their fight should have been a little bit more even matched. I thought it should have been a little bit better, or a little bit longer, actually. Other than that, I think Kill Bill Volume 1 is just freaking flawless in that aspect. Kill Bill Volume 2 is a more slower movie. It's more storytelling. My favorite parts of that movie actually are, I love it when she's doing her training with her master. Oh man, Lo Pan or whatever his name was. Not Lo Pan's from Big Trouble in Little China. Pai Mei.
That's what
Pai Mei. Yeah. I love that whole montage of her training with Pai Mei, and I love the music that RZA does with it in that. And I love the fight between her and Daryl Hannah. I thought that was a really good fight. A small, close fight in a trailer where they can't really fully go at it, but it had a lot of good stuff to it. I thought the end fight between her and Bill was a little bit of a letdown, to be honest with you. I thought it should have been longer. I thought it should have been better. You build Bill up this whole time, and her fight with him is only, what, a minute, if that? Hell, no, I don't even think it's a minute. I think it's maybe 30 seconds at the most. And I just feel a little let down from that fight there. But like I said, other than that, stylistically, all the stylistic choices he did for these movies, the whole chapter system, which he uses in his later movies, this was the first ones that he did that with. I thought everything was fantastic, except my few little nitpicks there. And like I said, I love this movie. I think these movies are his best, and I don't think he'll ever top them. And I'm hoping that if he ever does do a sequel for any of his movies, we get a Kill Bill Volume 3. So yeah, Kill Bill, both volumes put together to me are #1 in my book. Issa, we know that it's #1 in your book too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I think it's such a great revenge story. I think Quentin, actually, Kill Bill is one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, put together it is. It's so well shot. The fight scenes are well shot. And the story's so compelling, like, you just have to keep watching it. Like, no bathroom breaks, no nothing. Like, you gotta keep watching it. The villains are just phenomenal. You hate them and you love them at the same time. And I think Oren's backstory being animated was a very unique choice. I didn't particularly like it, but I thought it was pretty unique and cool to be put in there. And it feels like a comic book. Like Kill Bill feels like a comic book. From the way they fight to the gore to the kind of silliness, like sounds that they put in there. Like when Uma Thurman realizes something and plays that silly little sound effect. I think it's such a comical movie. And it's like the perfect amount of gore too. Like not too little and not too much.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say. If Quentin Tarantino had not been the famous director he was, let's say he was just some low-budget B director, and he made this movie with all the stylistic choices and all the little sound effect insert in and the over-the-top gore and stuff like that, this would have been considered a B movie and would have been sitting on the video cassette shelf somewhere and never would have seen the movie theaters. But thankfully, Tarantino was a famous director, and he came out with this, and we got it.
Yeah, and I feel like the volume 1 is more techno, kind of, if that makes sense. And then the second one's more western.
Yeah.
Like, they both have a very different styles. The first one and the second one do. I feel like they could have done a little bit more with the girl with the eye patches backstory. Like, you don't really know that much about her, so I feel like they could have done a little bit more, but I don't mind that they didn't. Like, it was, you know. And I feel like the fight scene with Bill, I feel like it was worth it. Like, because Bill's like the leader. He don't really fight. He's the leader, you know. And I think it made sense. I think the ending fight scene made a lot more sense than them just fighting. Yeah.
Okay. So that is our Kill Bill selection. So if we go back and look, my number 1 is, of course, Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. My number 2 is Pulp Fiction. Let's see, my number 3 is Inglourious Bastards. My number 4 is Django. My number 5, Reservoir Dogs. Number 6, Hateful Eight. Number 7, Jackie Brown. Number 8, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And my number 9 is Death Proof. But like I said before, I like to stress that I think all of his movies are good. I don't think he's made a bad movie. The same can't be said for other directors. I probably put him right there behind John Carpenter as my favorite director. And the next movie that he comes out with, I will see. And I'll be a loyal fan of his, even if he makes a stinker. Because he's made all these movies and hasn't made a stinker. So I'll give him one mulligan. He hadn't had to use it yet. He's had 9 movies and he hadn't had to use a mulligan yet. Now I know it's an acquired taste for some people. Like my wife doesn't, she can't stand Quentin Tarantino. And I don't know why, she just can't. And I guess she don't like his style of movie making. So I understand that his movies are a certain cup of tea to people. But I always thought he was a great filmmaker ever since I saw Pulp Fiction in '94. I knew he would be really good. And I was happy and fun to create this list. And I can't wait for his next movie. And I'm glad at least somebody in my family picked up on him. I know Caitlin likes his movies too. So.
And my number 1 was Kill Bill. My number 2 was Django Unchained. My number 3 was Reservoir Dogs. My number 4 was The Hateful Eight. My number 5 was Inglourious Bastards. My number 6 was Jackie Brown. My number 7 was Pulp Fiction. Number 8, Death Proof. And number 9, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I actually, like, with John Carpenter for me, I hate his movie Vampires. Like, I cannot watch it. Like, if somebody were to put a gun to my head and make me watch it, I would just want them to kill me. Because I can't sit through that movie again. But Quentin Tarantino, I could sit through these movies multiple times. They're all good. I mean, Death Proof, it's silly, but it's good. And Kurt Russell makes it, so. But if it wasn't Kurt Russell, the movie would be bad.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. Except the vampires thing. I actually like vampires. So let me know in the comments, am I wrong about Pulp Fiction? This newer generation doesn't seem to appreciate it, whereas I think my generation does. Do I hold it in too high esteem because of its sentimental value to me? Because of the year '94? I was 20 years old back then. Yeah, I was 20 years old, having the time of my life. So I think that's why it holds such high esteem for me. But yeah, Quentin Tarantino, great director. Can't wait to see his next movie when it comes out with it. I hope it's something different. I'm pretty sure it will be. But I would love to see a Kill Bill Volume 3 or a Vega Brothers movie with John Travolta and Michael Madison. So, yeah, you don't like John Travolta, do you?
Yeah, I do not. Like, I can't. He does well in Pulp Fiction, and I'm sure he does well in his other movies, but now he's awful now. Like, he can't act now. But I have this thing, like, if you replace these actors with actors that you don't know, or actors that, you know, you're not really, you have no clue who these people are, you've never seen them in your life. If you replace them with people that aren't anything to you, then would you still like the movie? And with, you know, Kill Bill for me, yeah, I would still like the movie. But if for, like, Pulp Fiction, no, I wouldn't. I think Samuel Jackson makes it, but if it wasn't Samuel Jackson, then, you know, it wouldn't be anything to me.
Okay. Well, I hope to see you next time. Hope you enjoyed it. We enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching these to get ready for this. And if you're not a fan, I would honestly suggest you become one. If you need a test movie to become one, if you've never seen a Quentin Tarantino movie and said, look, I don't see what the hype is about. If you've never seen one, I recommend you watching Kill Bill. That would be the one I'd want you to watch first, and then watch any of the others, or Django Unchained, or Inglourious Basterds. If you are a Tarantino fan but you haven't seen all of his movies, maybe now is a good time, since we're all in this situation with the quarantine stuff. Now is a good time. On Amazon, you can buy the Quentin Tarantino collection. Has all of his movies except for The Hateful Eight and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So it has 7 of his movies. All 7 of his first movies for $65, all on Blu-ray. So you can't beat that. And then you can get The Hateful Eight for pretty cheap. So, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood just came out. But if you're a fan, hey, let me know your order of what you like and what you dislike. So I hope to see you next time. Until then, have fun.